Alright, so today we're going to be talking about positive externalities. There's two kinds, positive externalities of consumption and positive externality of production. So we're going to start with consumption. Now, I know this graph looks a little bit intimidating to start, but we're going to break it down. So, originally, you have your supply curve, that's this marginal cost of supply, and your demand curve. Now, due to these, you'll have your quantity of equilibrium and your price of equilibrium. In this case, that's at quantity 5 and at price 6. Now, we're talking about electric cars in this example. So some of the benefits of electric cars, right? So you have less emissions, better air quality, you can drive in the carpool lane without carpooling. These are kind of implicit benefits that come on top of buying an electric car. So let's say that these sort of implicit external benefits have a monetary value of about $2,000 per car. So that would be the positive externality. Coming back to this graph, that's this line right here that says marginal benefit plus external benefits curve. So we have to look back at sort of our original graph. This pink highlighted portion, that's your total surplus, which as we know is divided by consumer surplus and producer surplus. Once you add this curve, you get this yellow portion, which is societal benefit. Now, you do have a deadweight loss indicated by this orange triangle, but that can be taken away by government subsidies. So, for example, $2,000 tax credit per electric car purchasing. Now that incentivizes people to buy electric cars because not only do you get all these benefits, but you also get the societal benefit up here. So even though it might be a little bit more expensive to buy an electric car, this extra societal benefit makes it worth it. Now, moving on to positive externalities of production. You again start with a regular supply-demand curve. So you'll have your price of equilibrium, your quantity of equilibrium. But in this case, there's a little bit of a difference between private and social. So for demand, your marginal benefit is the same between social marginal benefit and private marginal benefit. So they're the same because there's no consumption externalities. With supply, though, you're only looking at marginal private cost of production. So private. Anyway, with the benefits to positive externality, we're using tree farming as the example. So some of the benefits are it reduces CO2 in the atmosphere, shelter for food and animals. So these are benefits outside of the firm. So because the firm can't charge for these benefits, they're often underprovided in the market. That being said, there's still some ways that it can benefit the consumer, which sort of incentivizes them to produce more. Anyway, so we're looking at this marginal cost to society of more trees being planted. And this creates this shaded area that's external benefit. And when you're looking at this graph and the different intersections, obviously we have our social marginal benefit and this quantity of equilibrium. But now that we've added this line of marginal social cost, we have some new things. So the quantity of equilibrium is staying the same, at least for now, but we have a new marginal cost, and that's social. And basically, when we're looking at this graph, our marginal social benefit is greater than our marginal social cost, which means that our resources are underallocated, which makes sense because what firm wants to make more of something that has benefits they can't charge for? Because they can't charge us for CO2 being, less in the atmosphere. So there's this social optimal allocation of resources. It's an efficient output. And that is when marginal social benefit equals marginal social cost. The way you find that point is the intersection between demand and marginal social cost, which happens to be right here, right? And this is the point of equilibrium for this graph. This gives us the socially optimal quantity at which you want to plant trees. So before in the market, you would want to plant 3 trees so that you would have your equilibrium price of 10, and that would be market in equilibrium. But now that you're taking into account the marginal social cost, your new quantity of equilibrium is 5, and your new price is 8. So that would be positive externalities of consumption and production. There's really not much more to say about it. Those were 2 different examples. Obviously, positive externalities of consumption affect the consumer by changing the way that total surplus works out, whereas positive externalities of production affect the producer in taking into account some benefits that they might not be able to charge for, and therefore changing their quantities and prices to find a new equilibrium.